In Wolfenstein: The New Order, you play as a pretty hardcore dude named BJ Blazkowicz. Not many people know this, but BJ's initials actually stand for Boop Joop. Good old Boop Joop Blazkowicz is a man who cannot stop eating dog food to save his life. It's like an addiction or something. And I know this game takes place during wartime, but there's other food lying around, so it's not like he has to eat it. But also, in my experience, that's just kind of what people from Texas are like. I've always thought of Wolfenstein as being kind of the forgotten older brother of Doom and Quake, which are really the other two series that id Software is best known for. It's never been as popular as Doom, and it's never been as weird or as competitive as Quake. Essentially, these games have always been World War II shooters where you play as BJ and you gun down Nazis and you fight Mecha Hitler and all the rest. In spite of some silliness and some supernatural stuff, they've always been much more grounded in reality than Doom or Quake. Everyone thinks that Wolfenstein 3D, which is essentially a kind of proto-Doom, was the first Wolfenstein game, but the first two Wolfenstein games came out before that, and flat out weren't even made by id Software, and they looked like this, like old NES games. But ever since Wolfenstein 3D, the series has been known as a series of first-person shooters. I haven't played Wolfenstein 3D in probably a decade, but from what I remember, it's fun, but it's simply not as good as the original Doom games that came out in the years following it. It's a good game, but I think that most people would agree that those Doom games improved in every single way upon the Wolfenstein 3D formula. And so because of that, I think only really hardcore FPS fans return to that one regularly. So I say all that to say this. Wolfenstein is kind of an underdog. It's still a very, very well-known series, but it doesn't have the same prestige as something like Doom or Half-Life or Halo. In 2014, Machine Games essentially rebooted the Wolfenstein games, throwing BJ Blazkowicz into the future. And I say the future in quotes because they have all kinds of crazy machines and robotic technology, but it takes place in the year 1960, which happens to be the same exact year BioShock takes place, so I don't know if that was intentional or just a coincidence. But basically, BJ gets wounded and is put into a vegetative state for 14 years, and he suddenly comes out of it because his urge to murder Nazis overwhelms him. And on one hand, it's like, you're telling me you could have gotten up out of your wheelchair for the past 14 years, but you just wanted to chill? But also, I think that undying bloodlust is a perfectly good reason to wake up from a coma, especially because you want to kill some Nazis. My greatest complaint with this game is that you don't get to kill enough Nazis. And you might be saying, but Noah, the entire game is about killing Nazis. To which I say, that is true, but can you ever really have enough Nazi killing? But anyway, BJ wakes up from his coma and has kept all 400 pounds of muscle that he had since before he was in a vegetative state. But again, I think this is probably just his sheer hatred of the Nazi war machine manifesting itself, or something. I don't know, dude. So the premise of this game is that the Nazis won World War II, and honestly, this is a kind of tired premise at this point, but it's well done here. This is a fun enough game and well written enough game to get a pass for me. So basically, because the Nazis won in this timeline, all you can do is resist them. So BJ, immediately after waking from his 14-year-long nap, seeks out resistance fighters and he joins them so they can all work together and take out the Nazis. So this game came out before Doom 2016, right? And Doom 2016 kind of brought boomer shooter style gameplay back into the mainstream and helped make it popular again. But I think Wolfenstein was already starting to do that with this specific game. You run incredibly fast, and for the most part, you're meant to mow dudes down as quickly as possible. You can dual wield most guns, which is absolutely insane, and I absolutely love it. So this game is mostly like go, 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 go. But also, it's one of those games that you can play in a kind of pseudo-stealth way, where you can sneak up behind dudes and take them down quote-unquote silently, even though all of these silent takedowns would totally alert everyone within a 5-mile radius because they're so freaking loud. Half the time when you grab onto a guy to stealth kill them, they yell, so how that is not alerting their buddies, I have no clue. And I call this pseudo-stealth because it's not really stealth in the same way that something like Thief is, just because it feels like in this you can be quiet and kill guys, but if you're discovered, that's okay because you can just start blasting. So I promise I'm not trying to gatekeep what is or isn't stealth, because honestly, I'm not even really into stealth. But it's undeniable that if you get discovered by an enemy in this game, it's not a complete disaster in the same way it is in a serious stealth game. I actually really love this style of gameplay because in-universe, BJ's a spy, so it feels more in character for him to be quiet than to have him be running and gunning constantly. But I think this game allows for enough of a mix between the two so that it doesn't ever really get stale. The levels in this are really interesting. Machine Games took full advantage of this setting and really tried to make this alternate future feel fleshed out and unique compared to other war-focused games, and the levels are great examples of that. One of my favorites is the mission where you go to the moon. In this game, the Nazis have their own futuristic moon base, because of course they do. And there's a zero-gravity section or two, and it's just fun. I would say that this level reminds me of the Call of Duty Zombies map, literally called Moon, but I think that within the context of Wolfenstein's world and story, the experience is different enough to not bother me too much. And I love this level because in it, all your guns are white, I guess to remind you that you're on the moon? It just makes me laugh because it's the exact thing that I could see some big dumb army doing, but regardless, I suppose it's a nice little detail to differentiate the level from the others. But the moon in general is pretty cool, so anyone who wants to stick it in their art gets a big ol' thumbs up from me. Another favorite of mine is the level where you use... Let me make sure I'm getting this right. You use an ancient Jewish floating harpoon spike ball to rip up a bridge, and then you have to run across through the twisted and messed up wreckage and kill Nazis the whole time. And no, I'm not making that up. The ancient Jewish floating harpoon spike ball is a real thing. Or like, I don't know if it's actually a real thing, like in real life, but in the game, it's real. And also, it's used multiple times because it's freaking radical. In my Silent Hill 4 video, I talk about that game's spinning spike ball, and how I wanted a mini one of those to stick on my desk, and I would like to say that I would also like a mini one of these from this Wolfenstein game, because apparently I am a spike ball collector now. Unlike pretty much every other boomer shooter ever, this game places a large emphasis on its cutscenes and story, and you could tell there was a lot of effort put into it so that the player would hopefully become emotionally invested, which is kind of interesting, just because the original games were created in an environment where the story was used as a means to an end, that end specifically being to get you to kill as many pixelated Nazis as possible. So to see the story being turned into an end unto itself is actually a really cool evolution, I think. The story of this game goes back and forth tonally between being kind of fun and silly, haha, and then being incredibly, incredibly dark. At the end of the very first level, you, as BJ, must decide which of your men dies in an incredibly violent and twisted way, and whichever guy you choose leads to a separate timeline, with the idea that depending on who you choose to live, you'll have a slightly different experience. And there are a couple points where this choice is referenced, but really, having played through both scenarios before, I can honestly say that your choice doesn't really affect the game dramatically in any real meaningful way. So it's kind of like, what's the point? All it does is change who your buddy is, and that in turn affects whether you get better armor or more health. I do really feel like more could have been done with this choice story-wise, because again, there are a few references to it. Like, since I chose Fergus to be my bud this playthrough, there was a brief cutscene where he got mad at me for not picking the other guy over him, and had some survivor's guilt he was dealing with. But nothing changes all that dramatically, regardless of the choice. I do think that if you're going to have the player literally choose who lives and dies, you should really, really do more with that than what's been done here. BJ obviously hates the main villain, who is the one who forced this choice upon him, but I almost feel like he should have struggled with the weight of the choice more. And I would have loved to see how that choice, how having to sacrifice one of his men and choose to sacrifice one of his men affected his morale and his mindset as a leader. But maybe he doesn't struggle with the choice or let it affect him deeply because he is a hardened war vet and has seen so much violence and chaos over the years. But you could even take that aspect of his character into a really interesting direction. I do actually really like BJ in this. He's not some stereotypical dumb meathead soldier. He's an actual decent dude, I think. Someone who just wants to live a peaceful, calm, quiet life with a wife and kids and a nice suburban home, but he's been caught up in this seemingly never-ending war. I don't think he's a particularly deep character, but I think he's sincere, and I think that as a character trait is severely undervalued. BJ is a pretty static character. He doesn't change, he doesn't really grow, but in spite of that, he's still a captivating character, just because of that deep-rooted sincerity within him. He genuinely and truly believes in what he's fighting for and in the people around him, and that is what makes him admirable as a character. There are plenty of supporting characters as well, and all of them are unique, but I don't know that I really loved any of them or grew attached to them, if I'm being completely honest. But some of the characters actually have some depth to them that I didn't initially expect. There are these audio logs sent to you by Anya, who's BJ's former nurse turned girlfriend, and the audio logs are about, I think it's her cousin Ramona, and there are like 24 of them, but if you listen to them all the way through, I think it pays off in a super meaningful way that I didn't expect. And in the same way that BJ doesn't have much depth, neither do the villains, but I mean, they're evil Nazis, so I think that works. Because even though I don't think that Frau Engel or Death's Head are all that interesting, I think that within the context of the story, they provide human enough faces for the player to hate and despise. And even though he doesn't have any depth and he feels like a almost cartoony supervillain, I do wish we saw more of Death's Head just because his actor's so excellent and just sells the part. And that's true of every character. The voice work and acting is just great. Now, what don't I like about this game? Honestly, anytime you're not in combat and killing Nazis, the game just isn't that much fun. In between missions, BJ returns to the Resistance's base, and typically you have to run around and do fetch quests while you're there. And they're just annoying, really, because fetch quests suck and are never ever fun. Because, especially in this game, what they are is it's just like, BJ, would you please grab me a pair of socks from the other room? And they tried to throw in side quests while you're at your home base, but again, they're literally all just fetch quests. There's literally a part where a woman is weeping alone in a corner, and she asks you, please BJ, I lost my wedding ring, would you help me find it? And being the absolute saint and kind-hearted individual I am, I promptly turned around and walked away. I imagine the conversation in-game went something like this. Please, Mr. BJ, help me find my wedding ring. I am the war hero Boop-Doop Blaskowitz, and I have over 1,900,000 billion Nazis to take out, and you want me to find a ring? Please, Mr. BJ, it's all I have. I don't know why she's British now. Nah, sister, you done been down there with the vermin and the bugs, and you got time to find it. Please, Mr. BJ, have heart. I got dog food to eat. Something like that. But anyway, fetch quests like that are just not fun. And they threw this into the game so that you would have time to breathe in between all the action, but they could have figured out literally anything else to put in. Just fetch quests are garbage. I've said enough about this, let's move on. This is really one of the few games that I've played that I wish had multiplayer. I seriously think that Team Deathmatch with all these guns and mechanics could have been so much fun. I'm definitely way more into single player games than multiplayer games. So again, this is like weird for me to say something like this, to want a multiplayer mode, but I really do think that there may have been some potential to have a multiplayer hit just because the gunplay is that good. I do think that these Wolfenstein games are significantly overshadowed by the recent Doom games, just because they're not as in your face in the same way those games are. But the New Order is excellent, really just a lot of fun. And I don't think it's competing with the newer Doom games so much as it's presenting a different spin on the old boomer shooter formula. And so I think it gets props for that, for just being its own thing. This was my first time playing the game since like 2017, something like that, and I had a great time. So in conclusion, I love Wolfenstein: The New Order. I do have one last thing to talk about before I go, but I'm spoiling the end of the game, so if you don't want to hear that, then go check out something else by me. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so at the very end of the game, you fight Death's Head in a Mecha Hitler type suit, and BJ destroys the suit, and he stabs Death's Head multiple times. And this dude is literally 100 years old. And when I say literally, I mean literally. Like, according to the wiki, he is exactly 100 years old. So BJ stabs the crap out of him, and so it's like, yay, we took out this evil Nazi scientist, and we saved the day, and, you know, whatever else. And so Death's Head is standing there after getting stabbed, and then he just pulls out a grenade, and then he unpins the grenade, and then instead of hitting it away, BJ watches it until it blows up right in his face. And every time I've seen this ending, I'm just like, are you for real right now? Boop-Doop just let a grenade blow up in his face at point-blank range? Like, seriously, this is absurd. And so that's how the game ends, with BJ bleeding and wounded on top of a castle that's about to be bombed. And it's like BJ really couldn't have hit the grenade out of Death's Head's hand. Try saying that 3 times fast. Like, it's just such a minor thing, but to have your hero stare at an avoidable danger and not even try to get away from it is just nonsense. Like, and there's no other way to say it. It's dumb, it's stupid, it's just foolishness. It's frustrating to see BJ make it all the way to the end, and then to just eat a grenade. And so it's just not a great way to end what is an otherwise phenomenal game. But really, the game is still fun. It's still one I highly recommend. So, like I said, I love Wolfenstein. Thank you for watching, thanks for sticking around, and have a nice night. So, boop boop.